Well, first off, let me introduce myself. I'm Representative Larry Walsh out of the 86th District in Joliet, Illinois. Thank you all for coming here today. We are here today to announce the introduction of House Bill 3293. And this bill will establish a low carbon portfolio standard that will help reduce carbon emissions. More specifically, the bill will require electric utilities to purchase 70% of their electricity from qualified low carbon energy sources, such as solar, wind, hydro, nuclear, tidal, wave, and clean coal. This legislation would make Illinois the national leader in ensuring the clean energy future, even ahead of other environmental leaders like California. Under the LCPS, electric utilities would rely upon Illinois Power Agency to develop an open, transparent, and competitive process to obtain low carbon energy credits. Costs associated with purchasing the low carbon energy credits would be collected from all retail customers. Just like in Illinois' renewable portfolio standard, the LCPS is a requirement that only applies to electric utilities that serve more than 100,000 customers, notably ComEd and Ameren. The LCPS does not apply to smaller electrical utilities, electric cooperatives, or municipal electric utilities. The legislation also includes a number of safeguards to protect consumers similar to those for Illinois' other clean energy programs, such as consumer price cap, rebate mechanisms if wholesale prices exceed a specific amount. But equally important, the proposal would secure current and future low-carbon jobs. The nuclear industry alone employs thousands of highly skilled laborers in our state, and 8,000 of those jobs could be lost if 3 of our nuclear plants close, according to a report by the Illinois Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity. We are joined here today by some of our friends in labor, and they can speak at this in greater detail, but make no mistakes, this legislation is about jobs and it's a jobs bill. So I'd like to encourage my colleagues and thank them for coming here to support this bill, the low carbon portfolio standard, to help us secure our economy today and in the future. And with that, I'd like to introduce the chief co-sponsor, Representative Mike Tryon from McHenry County.
Thank you, Representative Walsh, and it's a pleasure for me to be here today and support my colleague in expressing support for a low-carbon energy standard. And essentially, if you look back to 2010, Illinoisans have enjoyed the benefits of a deregulated electricity market. They have enjoyed market-driven competition. And that's one thing that we put in place that has worked, I think, very well. As we see the marketplace change, we see how the marketplace affects our consumers. We also look at how it affects that integrated portfolio that makes it a stable and dependable and competitive marketplace. House Resolution 146 was an initiative that detailed some of the concerns and consequences that would happen to the Illinois marketplace if any one of our portfolio changes were made that might affect one of our generators. Let's look at, we seem to talk sometimes in what this bill will impact in the marketplace, and we need to talk essentially sometimes about the impact this bill would have on the marketplace if we didn't pass a bill similar to this. So if we lost any one of our generating components with nuclear power, we would be looking at a substantial loss. $1.8 billion is what we are looking at in economic activity that's generated from these units. The cost to our ratepayers and our consumers throughout Illinois could reach as high as $1.2 billion. $200 million worth of goods and services in local economies where these power generation facilities are located. The report found that maintaining stable prices depends upon continued operation of these facilities. The power price increases in the first year could be as much as 10%, or $437 million. And that's just for the ComEd customers. The Ameren customers and the remainder of the customers would see about an $810 million increase. As my colleague stated, the report indicates that this isn't something that we can't act on. This is something that the General Assembly needs to act on and in this session in order to preserve our dependable and integrated marketplace for consumers throughout Illinois. And I am happy to be able to be here with you, work on this issue as we proceed through the legislative process. I would also like to introduce Mike Kerrigan from AFL-CIO.
Thank you, Representative. I think I'm the first person in the Capitol who's trying to be in two places at the same time. But it was important to be here. I'm Michael Kerrigan, President of the Illinois AFL-CIO, and the AFL-CIO supports the Illinois Coal Carbon Portfolio Standard for 3 reasons: jobs, jobs, and jobs. Our legislators should recognize the bill's enormous potential for creating and preserving clean energy jobs while lowering carbon emissions in Illinois. The stakes are high for our economy and for our environment. Legislators in Springfield should enact the Illinois Low Carbon Portfolio Standard to secure clean energy jobs in our state and protect the livelihoods of thousands of workers and their families. Thank you.
I'd like to bring up Dean Apple, who is the business manager for IBEW Local 15.
Thank you very much. Good morning. I'm not an expert at this, so I'll just try to do my best. My name is Dean Apple. I'm the president business manager of IBEW Local 15 out of Downers Grove, Illinois. We represent the 5 operating plants that Exelon has. 2 of them that are on the list to possibly close are the Quad Cities and the Byron Station. And I represent them as well as the southern stations, LaSalle County, Dresden, and Braidwood Station. So we've got a lot of energy around this. This is going to affect my workers immediately if something would happen. In them 2 plants that I'm talking about, Quad and Byron, we represent a little bit, give or take, around 600 members that work there day in and day out. So I want to let people know what I'm representing today. I'm here really to support the Low Carbon Portfolio Standard because every morning thousands of our highly skilled laborers across Illinois go to work at our nuclear plants. These are highly skilled, good paying, full-time permanent jobs, and they won't be easily replaced, as we all know. I'll give you a little bit more on that. We just closed the Zion Station about 98, 99 up in northern Illinois, and I had workers up until last month in January of this year. They're finally decommissioning that plant, so we no longer have Exelon workers at the Zion plant. And I would encourage anybody that's in this room today, if you want to see what the plant closing would do to the economy and the environment and everybody up there, go look at their school districts and go talk to the mayor of that town or anybody for that matter, see what happens when you lose that tax base of a nuclear power plant and how it affects the community. We're talking almost about 8,000 jobs here in Illinois that could be lost, and these are according to the Illinois Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity, the study they did that came out earlier this year. And once they're gone, they're gone. I can speak on behalf because I actually worked at the Byron nuclear plant my whole career. I was a mechanic and a certified welder, and when they close these plants, I want everybody to know you have to turn in your operating license to the NRC. And once you do that, you can never get it back. So this has to be taken seriously. There's no, well, we'll go back and get our license back. It's never happened in the history that I'm aware of. I've spent over 33 years in the nuclear industry, and I'm fully aware of what happens there. We have long supported all the above approach to energy, and our workers are employed at facilities across the spectrum of energy technology. I also represent the fossil plants. I represent the Fisk and Crawford plant that closed down. I'm in Chicago. We still have operating plants. I represent one here south of Springfield and in the Joliet area, as well as at Waukegan. So everybody here has got something at stake. The Low Carbon Portfolio Standard is a technology neutral policy, so we don't want anybody to get hurt here. I do represent fossil, as I stated earlier, and is consistent with all the above approach that would encourage and use of low carbon energy sources, including renewable, nuclear, and clean coal. It values our existing energy sources and supports the development of new technology. I urge the General Assembly to take up and pass this low carbon portfolio standard. It's good for Illinois, it's good for the working families, and good for the environment, and good for our economy. And I thank you, and I'd like to introduce Rick Turbin from the UA, the Plumbers and Pipe Fitters.
Thank you, Dean. My name is Rick Turbin. I am the Legislative Director for the Illinois Pipe Trades Association. We represent 22 local unions that cover the plumbing, pipe fitting, and sprinkler fitting industries. We have members that are employed at all of the nuclear power plants across the state of Illinois. I just want to echo quickly the comments that President Kerrigan and Dean Apple relayed. And we have a, we're kind of at a crossroads here. The closing of these plants would be a significant loss to our members and the not only our members but also the communities that the tax base represents. So I think as we move forward, we want to make sure that we are considering the economy, the jobs, and the tax base as well. So appreciate it. Thank you.
Next, I'd like to invite up Carolyn Peters, who is the mayor of Clinton, Illinois. Mayor.
Good morning. My name is Carolyn Peters, and I am the mayor of Clinton. And I'm here today to express my support for the low carbon portfolio standard because it will help maintain Illinois' existing nuclear energy plants, which provide enormous benefits to the state, its families, and its communities. Illinois nuclear plants are the economic lifeblood of our communities, and the workers who are employed at these plants help support other industries, including hospitality, construction, and manufacturing. Exelon's Clinton nuclear plant has operated since 1987, and it's been constantly upgraded with the latest technology to provide us with the reliable, safe energy that our community and our state depends upon. Most of the Clinton plant's approximately 700 employees live in the area. They are our neighbors and our friends. They volunteer in our community, they attend our schools, and they are the patrons of our local businesses. The 6 Illinois Exelon nuclear facilities and their headquarters employ nearly 6,000 full-time workers at an average salary of over $105,000 a year. These are obviously good-paying, highly skilled jobs that won't be easily replaced if the plants close, and as has been mentioned before. In addition to the permanent workforce in my community, Clinton Power Station also employs several hundred additional temporary contractors when they refuel the plant. These contractors further boost our local economy during their stay. The Clinton Power Station is the largest taxpayer in DeWitt County, contributing nearly $13 million annually in taxes. Thousands of Illinois employees work round the clock to keep these plants running safely, efficiently, and reliably so that there's power when we need it. But that's in peril, as 3 of these plants, which includes the Clinton Power Station, face a very real threat of being closed prematurely. I believe this is not just idle talk from Illinois nuclear plant operators. 2 other plants, the Kewaunee Nuclear Facility in Wisconsin and Vermont Yankee in Vermont, have already closed for the same reason our plants are threatened. When the Kewaunee nuclear plant closed in 2013, it had a tremendous effect on the local economy. When the door shut, the local host county witnessed a loss of 15% of its jobs and 30% of its tax revenue. Our communities cannot afford such a loss. The time has come for action. The men and women of the General Assembly who are tasked with safeguarding our state's future must act now to prevent the catastrophic premature closure of our nuclear plants. I urge their strong support of the low carbon portfolio standard. Thank you.
Next, I'd like to invite up Christopher White from GE Hitachi Nuclear Energy.
Thank you and good morning. I'm Christopher White. I'm Vice President of Communications for GE Hitachi Nuclear Energy. I was a longtime supporter of Illinois' clean nuclear energy facilities. GE's nuclear division is proud of our tremendously positive impact on the economy and environment of the state. You've heard a lot about the economic impacts from a year-round basis. I'd like to provide a little detail on those temporary workers that Mayor Peters spoke about earlier. Over the past 2 years alone, approximately 600 nuclear experts have come to Illinois to support Exelon's nuclear operations, and their impact can't be overstated. Over that time, these highly trained experts have spent approximately $5 million in local hotels, local restaurants, and other local establishments. In addition to the direct economic impact that these workers had, they also contribute approximately $500,000 to state income taxes. I am pleased to be here today to express our support of the low carbon portfolio standard, which can both help preserve existing plants while also recognizing the importance of other low carbon emitting generation options. The low carbon portfolio standard will allow our company, GE Hitachi, to continue to grow our operations here and to provide clean energy and significant economic and environmental impacts. Thank you.
And finally, we'd like to finish up with Joseph Dominguez from Exelon.
Hi, good morning, everybody. My name is Joe Dominguez. I'm Senior Vice President for Public Policy for Exelon. I'm honored to be here with Representatives Walsh and Tryon as they introduced this bill this morning, House Bill 3293. I also want to recognize Senators Matty Hunter and Senator Rezin for their support for a similar piece of legislation that will be introduced in the Senate. Finally, I want to thank the other speakers and recognize Roberto Escalante. Roberto is the Chief Operating Officer of the Illinois Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. And his presence here reflects the fact that these plants and the jobs at these plants are not only important to the geographies of the state, but they're important to all the communities of the state, provide valuable opportunities for Latinos and other people of color in the state. This legislation will help clean the air. It will ensure a robust low-carbon economy. It will ensure that tens of thousands of jobs stay in Illinois. It will power Illinois for decades into the future, and it will maintain Illinois' position as the #1 producer of zero-carbon electricity in the United States. And that bears repeating. The most important commodity in this country today is zero-carbon electricity. And the state that produces most of it is not Texas, it's not California, it's not Washington, other big energy producers. It's produced here in Illinois, and nuclear power is the main reason why we are the national leader. Over 90% of the clean energy in this state comes from the state's nuclear power plants. And the good news for Illinois families and businesses is we can maintain this advantage and grow it. The vast majority of Americans believe that an all-of-the-above strategy, like the one discussed today, that includes hydro, wind, solar, nuclear, biomass, clean fossil fuels, are the recipe for dealing with climate change and lowering harmful emissions in the atmosphere. And this bill takes that common sense approach and puts it into policy action by creating a competitive landscape where all of these technologies compete against each other for the right to serve clean energy to Illinois customers. Now, the standard that is being introduced today is technology neutral. That means it is not designed to favor any one technology against the other, and as I said, allows them to compete against each other. I think this should put to bed, finally, claims that Exelon is looking for $580 million or that Exelon is looking for a specific bailout for nuclear energy. The only thing Exelon has asked for is the right to compete on the same playing field that all other zero-carbon resources presently compete with each other in Illinois. Now, the fact that we have had an unlevel playing field, the fact that nuclear has not heretofore been allowed to compete, is one of the reasons that we face challenges in the nuclear industry today, and you've heard about the plants that are in jeopardy. As I said, the state's plants produce over 90% of the clean electricity and over 50% of the energy used in Illinois. They provide about 6,000 jobs here in the state, and they support 28,000 jobs statewide. State reports that have been done as part of a response to the Illinois resolution, House resolution from last year, demonstrate that the value of these plants from an economic standpoint is $1.8 billion per year. Their value in keeping prices low has been measured by the grid operators to be hundreds of millions of dollars in addition to that in both northern and southern Illinois, and billions of dollars of additional monies are involved in the clean attributes that these provide, lessening, in effect, the cost of compliance with new carbon regimes that are coming out of EPA. Now, The other piece of this legislation that you'll see as you look at it more carefully is that it contains some first-of-its-kind consumer protections. First, it embraces the 2% rate cap that has been successfully used in other programs that support renewable energy specifically, clean coal specifically, and energy conservation. That consumer protection cap is also in this bill, but we go further than that. The bill has a sunset provision after 5 years or when Illinois adopts a more robust carbon policy. And it also provides for a reimbursement mechanism that would require winning bidders for these low carbon credits to return the monies they got from the state if energy prices unexpectedly rise. We think the addition of these consumer protections already is felt and will be felt in making this the most successful program. The cost benefits, if you look at all of the benefits of keeping the plants around versus the cost of this program, mean that we will receive $10 in benefits for every dollar spent. So we are proud to be here today. It is the beginning of a discussion on this bill with other policymakers. We urge the General Assembly and other policymakers to look at it very carefully and act on it promptly, as it is a matter that requires urgent action. Thank you. We will take questions from the media at this point.
D-O-M-I-N-G-E-Z?
Yes.
And your title?
I'm senior.
The most important commodity is zero carbon electricity. So reiterate for us exactly then, why the threat of all these closures? If it's so important and doing so great, why the threat?
It's a great question. The reality is, while our policies are all designed to encourage the production and the maintenance of zero carbon electricity, the fact of the matter is that nuclear power has thus far been excluded from the programs that actually provide compensation for zero carbon electricity. So it's the exclusion from that playing field that has injured the economics of the plants. We could say we value it, but until we put those values into action and policy, then there is no value.
Any guarantee in this law that if the legislation becomes law that the plants won't close?
You know, it is not written into the legislation that the plants will remain open, but we understand that that is a part of the dynamic, part of the legislative process, something that policymakers will want. And we think that with a successful piece of legislation, that commitment will come.
What sort of commitment would you be thinking there?
I think the commitment is going to extend for as long as this policy is in place. As I said, there's a sunset provision after about 5 years that will kick in. So I think the commitment would be commensurate in time with that sunset provision.
You know, I know you said that this would make all low carbon sources would be able to compete under this framework, but I mean, I've seen unions and Exelon up here. There's nobody from any of those other entities. Why might that be, or what sort of guarantee do we see that they could be able to compete against Exelon?
I think the fact that they're not here is simply a reflection on where we are in terms of the dialogue over this issue. I think as we have a discussion, I think more of those entities will appear and will be supportive of this approach.
Are there actual guarantees in this, though, in any way, shape, or form, that other low carbon sources would have an opportunity or a leg up in the bidding? Or?
This process ensures the lowest price for consumers regardless of technology. So accordingly, there is no guarantee that anybody with a higher price will be selected. The IPA is going to be directed to pick the cheapest resources that serve this benefit for consumers.
Well, the 800-pound gorilla is Exelon. You got the technology. What makes anybody believe that you won't be the lowest bidder?
Well, we hope to be the lowest bidder, but the simple fact of the matter is that we expect to have heavy competition in this program.
From who?
Wind assets primarily, some hydro assets primarily, maybe other nuclear generators.
That'd be existing, right? I mean,
it could
there
be
would
new
no
or
way for new entities. That's not kind of part of the whole dialogue here.
Well, keep in mind that there is already another program that supports wind and solar. The RPS program in Illinois supports those technologies as well as hydro. Nothing we are doing here today interrupts that process and that opportunity. It may very well be that economically that's a better program to incentivize new wind and new solar and that this will be a lesser opportunity for new resources. But I can't answer that. There's, over time, I'm sure you've heard that these technologies are coming to grid parity, meaning that they are going to be able to compete with nuclear and other technologies. And if that's true, if that comes to pass, then they'll have an opportunity to participate.
Joe, how much did your 3 plants that are losing money lose?
Well, I'll give you an example. We lost $100 million at just the Clinton plant last year. And so the losses tend to coincide with outages, so we have to refuel the plants occasionally, and when we refuel, that's where we invest in a lot of state-of-the-art refinements to the plants, and from a cash flow perspective, that's when we're spending a lot of money. So it's not a straight line, but year over year, what we've observed with regard to these 3 plants is that we're suffering losses and we're not able to recover our cash costs,
And how much,
let alone earn a profit.
how much did you lose in the other 2?
I'd have to give that to you. I'm not even sure we've made that public, to be honest with you, but
And
I don't have it.
How about the ones that made money? How much did you make there?
Again, I'd have to refer you to our SEC filing, and we don't break it out plant by plant in the filings, so I don't have an answer for you on that.
How can some be,
Yeah, so
Sure.
why not subsidize the ones that are losing with the ones that are making money?
Well, I think for anybody who's run a business, they understand that each part of the business needs to be profitable. So if you ran a chain of stores, you wouldn't necessarily keep stores that aren't making money in business simply because you have some stores that are making money. Each asset has to stand on its own merits, and so if an asset is not profitable, it will be shut down. And this is nothing new, frankly. We've seen this with Kewaunee, that was talked about. We've seen it with Vermont Yankee. The companies that own those nuclear facilities certainly make money on other assets, but it doesn't go into one big pot that that would support otherwise uneconomic units.
I mean, the difference is.
I think it's just a kind of a common sense the way people do
Yeah,
business.
there's a difference between a utility that people need to have energy versus somebody can choose to go to 17 different CVS's in town, and one of them might not be used, and you can lock that off, and that's a profit motive only. This is also dealing with consumers' lives and ability to, stay warm in the winter.
Yeah, well, and it's a very real concern to us. I would point out that the owners of those other nuclear assets were in fact utilities, just like Exelon. And just like Exelon, they participate in a competitive merchant market where units have to rise or fall based on their own economic merits. But very clearly, we have brought this issue to the attention of policymakers because we think these plants have this enormous reliability benefit associated with them. They are incredibly important to the economy in terms of keeping prices low. And that's why the representatives here have stepped forward and sponsored this piece of legislation.
Can you
how many
confirm?
plants are there? How many plants does Exelon have nuclear?
In the state of Illinois, we have 6 sites.
Where are they?
They are Dresden, Braidwood, Byron, Clinton, Quad Cities, and LaSalle.
And the last 3 are the losing ones, right?
I don't know what order I gave them to you, but the plants that have been talked about that are undergoing economic challenges are 3 of those 6, and they are Quad Cities, Byron, and Clinton.
I think we're coming up on the end of our time. If we have any other questions, one last question for our speakers, please feel free.
Why not take more questions?
I saw that the promise last year were actually up 31% from 2012. If I'm the average person who has power from you guys, and I hear you guys saying that we need assistance, but you're still getting profit, what would you say to those people who are paying, for your services, but still willing to have assistance in providing the services?
I think it comes back to the same question that was asked before. No one from Exelon has ever denied that the company is profitable. It is. What we're talking about is the profitability of units that are persistently losing money and our inability to keep those units open unless we recognize the important attributes that they provide. If we don't recognize the value of clean energy in the market, then clean energy resources will increasingly retire. And they'll retire on a unit-by-unit basis because that's the way we look at the business, that's the way everyone looks at their business.
It would seem that this would help you make more profits. If you're making profits now and you have everybody subsidize it through their own bills, $2 a month on average, then you're just going to make more profits, and why should the average citizen think that's a good idea?
Well, what it'll help us do is not make profits, but avoid losses that otherwise would be treated by retiring plants. As has been said this morning, the right way to look at this is the consequences of losing the plants. And what the reports that the state has done independently demonstrate is that the consequences are 10 times greater than the $2 that we're talking about on a monthly bill. And so we're trying to solve a problem here. And the problem and the teeth of the problem is far bigger than the solution.
Thank you for your time, everyone.
Yeah.